Today, we're talking to Deebie Armanious from Exodus Youth Worx, a Sydney-based charity involved in improving people's lives. My name is Daniel Noor, and you're watching Transformed. Hi Deebie.
Hello Daniel.
We're so happy to have you.
Thank you for the invitation.
It has been a long time coming. It's very difficult to get you. You're a very busy woman, and so I am very grateful that we have found this window in your schedule.
I apologise for that.
No.
Didn't know it was that bad.
We are about to address that actually. What is it that keeps you so on the go constantly? But first, before we get into your ministry work, I want to know a little bit about your upbringing. What is it that gave you this, shall we say, this heart for this ministry? Where did you grow up? What was your childhood like?
Sydney, Australia, in a normal Australian Anglo-Saxon family, fifth generation. So on a census, on an Australian census paper, we would tick Christian, but everyday life would be just normal. We didn't go to church, or we celebrated Christmas, but that was, Father Christmas, and Easter was the Easter Bunny. So Christian in name, but not baptised or not attending a church.
Yeah. So Christian in name, you say, and maybe in a culture that kind of celebrates Christian events and that type of thing.
Yes,
yeah.
And that's all. Yeah, there weren't, no Bible studies at home. There would be no scripture mentioned. In fact, the first time I remember seeing a Bible was in high school. I think around year 9, where I borrowed it from the library, and it was a large volume. I carried it home for 2 weeks. I don't think I got past chapter 5 of Genesis.
Yeah.
So no scripture, anything like that, no.
So this is your early childhood,
Yes.
which is here in Sydney. Was there anything lacking in your life? Did you feel maybe at this stage, did you notice maybe other Christians out and about? Was there any type of need maybe that you had?
Not a need, but definitely a vacuum. There was something missing, and so I was searching. So in my early teens, I was searching for something that I didn't know what I was looking for. So other faiths would come and present themselves to me, but nothing really drew me in. It wasn't until I was working with a Christian, so a Coptic Christian, that I didn't know was Christ at the time, but certainly he was coming closer to me. But when I now know him and I look back, I can definitely see where Christ was preparing me to meet him. Definitely.
Coptic Christians, you're talking about Egyptian Christians, is that the case?
Yes,
okay.
Coptic Christians, yes.
And they're a sacramental type of very traditional Christian church?
Yes, the Orthodox Church of Egypt, established by St. Mark in 42 AD.
Yes, and they
so very foreign to what I was used to.
To Sydney, Australia,
very
with
extreme
beaches and sand and sunshine.
Definitely.
And then the Pope. So
yes.
They do have a Pope of their own in Egypt. There's a father of the church.
Yes. Just recently, we have seen His Holiness Pope Tawadros II taking the chair of St. Mark.
Yes.
Pope Shenouda has passed away and blessed us for many years, and now we enter a new era. Yes.
So the second head of the church in this modern era, I suppose.
Well, that I have known personally.
And the 118th, perhaps, historically, I think that thereabouts.
Well, yeah, look, it's such a long history, yes.
Very different, though, like we said, to our context here in Sydney, where evangelical and Catholic churches, for example, are very prominent. So I want to know, was there any hardship maybe in this time in your life? So you've just started working now at a clinic that maybe made it appealing for you to see this very particular type of church.
If I were to sit down and write a book, I don't think I could have scripted what played out. To be part of a culture, a Middle Eastern culture in Sydney, let alone Christian, is about as extreme as it could have been, and added to that an Orthodox faith. So there was no hardship in the beginning, accepting an Orthodox faith, a Christian faith. God was very merciful and prepared my heart perfectly. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So you feel as though God was actually appointing steps for you, as it were.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And 35 years later, in the ministry of Exodus Youth Worx, our mission statement is part of Jeremiah 29, where God has a plan. And He has a plan for everyone, and it may take you to the ends of the earth.
Yeah.
It may be in your hometown, but there is a plan, and to have an open heart and to accept Him and His way will take you to God knows.
Yes, and this reality of a personal God as well, who actually does care about your life, is so surprising to so many people. Certainly to me, even, and I'm a Christian, or I at least claim to be. It's a very new thing.
It's one, like, in the knowledge of Him now, it's wonderful to know that He does know every hair on your head. He knows your heart, and He is working. If we can all just have that open heart to accept what is in front of us, and it may be hardship, it may be a broken home, it may be a struggle, but He's there with you. And if you can take that on board and acknowledge His presence in the storm, you can go to the ends of the earth.
Yes, and you have, and we'll soon talk about that. So you've now come into contact with some Christians in your workplace, it seems. Tell me a little bit more about that time in your life and what the next step was.
Well, someone interceded on my behalf and spoke to a minister, a priest of the Orthodox Church, and asked him to sit with me, because I was from a broken home and I was going through, pretty tough times. And I was only 15 and a half at the time. This particular priest, which is a very good lesson for me even now, language, there is no boundary. When we talk of God, there are no boundaries. Language or culture, He can cross all those things. And so this priest spoke not a word of English, but he came religiously every week to my workplace, to my employer, and opened the Bible and began to give the simplest of messages. And I can tell you the first message that came from those pages was that not to have any enemies, to have a life of reconciliation as much as possible with everyone. And that was the beginning of a journey to reconcile with my father, who I had not seen for some time. And I was blessed by that, and it just continued.
So that conversation you're having with this priest, it's a very fortuitous way, I suppose, to come into contact with the faith, talk to a priest.
Well, are we not all should be the image of Christ? And so some people like myself will not see Christ in a Bible. We did not have one at home. And so we are the fifth gospel to people. And how you present yourself and how you treat people can be the loudest of ministries.
Yes, so Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and me.
That's right.
And that seems like a lot of pressure, actually.
Well, we are very blessed to know the knowledge of Christ, and so He will ask us, how did you reflect my light into others' lives? He will, and we must respond positively to that.
I want to know how it is that we can be more confident about doing that. So tell me, what were the effects of that conversation? How did Christ affect your relationship with your father, for example, with your family, and even with your friends?
Of course, some didn't accept it, and they fell by the wayside. Some did, and supported me and continued to support me in that journey. So you will lose some, but you will gain many in that travel, in that journey. So bit by bit, slowly, I was baptized at the age of 15 and a half, and the Orthodox Church embraced me for who I was and accommodated me. Yes.
Wow.
Yes, which was massive for a church in the lands of immigration in Australia.
And an ethnic community as well.
Very heavy
Yes.
in that, yes.
Is this Christianity then, that it is supposed to be accessible, a community that's open?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There should not be colour or creed or poverty or richness or sickness or health that segregates us. It is one family, and they did that very well. Yes.
In fact, it actually reminds me of the early church. For our viewers, if you've ever read the book of Acts, you may read that they shared everything in common.
Yes.
They lived together, and there was no distinction, there was no hierarchy, there were no social statuses. It didn't seem that way, at least.
Yes. And that's how the Orthodox Church did present themselves. Although it is a hierarchical church, it was His Grace Bishop Antonius Marcos who I sat with and who spoke my language and who ushered in the invitation to join. And
that's
yes.
really wonderful. And a great testimony in having you. I think you are a witness to the effectiveness of Christ,
yes.
even in ethnicities or in communities.
Yes.
So, some hardships then maybe that followed this, and I want to move toward how it is that you came into contact. You noticed these young people around you in your community. What is it that that set you in that path?
I was involved with Sunday school and youth ministry in the Orthodox Church for a long time, and you lose people. You keep some in the embrace of the church life, in parish life, in communion, you keep them. But there were names missing over the years. And through the study of missiology, mission work, every soul is valuable. And so you can go to the ends of the earth, but you can look in your own backyard and say, well, there's people missing. Where are they? And often you will find it's not because of poverty, it's not because of there's no church in town. They live in a wilderness of depression or abuse or addiction. And those hardships became very real to those working or just beginning establishing that service of Exodus Youth Worx. And that's where we decided that our target group were those people in hardship in our backyard.
They seem new things in a way. When you speak of problems here in the affluent West, and many of our viewers may come from, be it the States or Europe or Australia, those fortunate parts of the world, we presume they're fortunate. They have all of their needs. There's a system in society that accounts for the poor, for example, or, and that seems like that's not the case, and actually that there are problems. What would you say to that?
Mother Teresa put it very nicely. In Calcutta you can see poverty, but poverty in the West, she said, is that of loneliness and depression. And she was right. They are isolated by addiction, by family breakdowns, by a different kind of poverty. So they are poor, but different poor.
So we too are poor.
We can be very rich. What is it, Revelations, one of the churches? You seem to be very rich, but you're very poor.
Yes.
We're poor in a different way.
Yeah.
In the first world.
Yes. And is it our society that contributes to this loneliness, this isolation?
I think, who could answer that? It can be. It can be we are so wealthy, we have everything around us that we need, and yet we don't know our neighbours. Our families can be in mansions, but there are no families within.
Yes.
So, hard question.
So go talk to your neighbours, first of all, make contact.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and be thinking about those around you, those in your immediate circle, the people you see every day, and yet it doesn't occur to you that there is just as much need here in my community as there is in this hypothetical Africa of my mind, where there are real problems.
Yeah, the romance of the poor,
Yes.
the romance of the third world. I mean, Christ, he instructed us, the Great Commission says, start in Jerusalem, Samaria, Judea, and then the ends of the earth. But Jerusalem is your family, Jerusalem is your neighbour,
Yes.
your extended family, those who were on that Sunday school list that are no longer there.
Yes, that's very hard. That makes it more pressing than ever. It brings the challenge right close to home. Okay, so you were involved in Sunday school ministry. What is it that allowed you to take the new and challenging step of dealing with young people with very difficult problems?
God plans his people and his servants. So after many years of youth service and dealing with young people with challenges, and also coming from the background I did come from, he prepared me for that. So I spoke their language, I knew where they were, I knew how to cross that cultural, there was no cultural boundary, but for immigrants in a new country, of course, looking to a young person that has a drug addiction, where do you begin? You don't know the language, you don't know where they buy it, you don't know what it looks like. But God used that knowledge that I had and used it for His good, and then we could reach out to those people where they were. And I think that's important, that Christ, not everyone will come to a church, not everyone will come to a Bible study or to a liturgy. So it is our responsibility to take Him to them. So where they are, meeting people where they are.
Take Christ to people.
To them. And we are called. We are called to travel to the Samaritan woman at the heat of the day where no one else is, at the well.
Yes.
Zacchaeus in the tree, meeting people where they are.
Yes.
Was his message.
Yes. And if I'm not mistaken, when I read that story about the Samaritan woman in the New Testament, it seems almost as though she was out of Christ's way, and that it was a tedious thing, to say the least. It was a tedious thing for him to go and make a very particular point of visiting this one person in the city. And he spoke to multitudes.
Yes. In fact, in the scripture it says he needed to go. There was that desire, that need to reach that one lost sheep, that one soul. And sheep is a collective noun. It's not about numbers. It's not about filling a building or filling a meeting. It's about one. And if we can reach one soul, then we have imitated Christ.
Yes, so
going to Samaria.
Perhaps we can say to our viewers that you must go too, that we must, we mustn't make a light thing of talking to people, especially people we have in mind. I'm sure there are a number of people, just a handful, I certainly know of some, who I have neglected to speak to in my life. I don't know about what's going on. I take it for granted that they're there and assume that everything's okay, but you must go.
We can never assume, never assume. And it, you know, people will say, well, I don't have the right words, but you have a smile and 2 ears. And often, and you know, you don't need a degree in theology to witness to people. It's, I'm here to listen. And that's all it is. It's just being there often for people to dump whatever they're feeling and to say, well, somebody cares. And you can win souls easily like that.
The first thing that started then this track was your consciousness that there was a need around you and that you could access it in a way that ethnic communities, Christian communities who come from overseas do have difficulty with sometimes. The problems of the West, you know, be it drug abuse or all of those difficult, dark areas that they don't tap into. What was it like logistically getting it started for you? How did that get underway? And we will talk a little bit about that as we go, but tell me about that hardship, maybe.
Hardship is it's a hard word. God was planning, and it took many years to make that first step outside of parish walls. We knew the need was there. We knew the people. We just needed, I suppose, courage and the facilities to go. You know, you can go and say, well, hey, what's your problem? And they'll say, well, for instance, drug addiction. Okay, well, what are the numbers? Where are the numbers for the local? Who do I talk to? And so building up those resources to have like at the tip of a finger, you know, okay, what are the names of the local detox centres? What are the drug counsellors, the psychiatrists who deal with drug addiction? Broken homes, okay, we need a facility to have you safe for the night. What are those numbers? Building those came years and years of work. And we want to hear more about that. I would say that this is a very taxing lifestyle. And you're constantly in contact with members of the community with very hard problems. Tell me, what does a day look like for you? A snapshot.
Yes.
It starts early in the morning. I would say, who prays enough? Who reads enough of Scripture? None of us do. Our fathers, the priests in the Orthodox Church, taught us to, the more you serve, the more you have to serve yourself. It's never enough. So as I begin each day, there are names and faces that come to me that any servant would not leave their room, but it would take hours to pray and to remember each one by name. So a prayer for me, for those that we serve, become sighs and become lifting up of the spirit, or lifting up of, please remember that person. So it begins in that sort of realm, I suppose.
And that is a type of prayer, I think.
Definitely.
This sighing when need is so great, when you're unable to articulate your thoughts, then that's when the Spirit intercedes. That's what we learn from Scripture, certainly.
Yes, and I think you see, to walk on water, you need just the courage to step up and to focus on Christ and not leave His eyes, not leave that focus. If you looked down, yes, you would drown. So we can't be consumed. The people we serve, any service, this is Christ Himself, and so they're His, and they're His people first. And so He knows their needs, and He knows what they need. We cannot be worried for that, otherwise we would crumble under that weight. So, getting up and taking each hour as it comes, each incident, each event, each appointment as it comes until the end of the day, whether that be at midnight, whether that be at 1 a.m.
Yes.
But what does it matter? If we are walking with Christ, then let us go.
And youth do come in off the streets, do they not? You're dealing with a different type of timetable here. It's not a 9 to 5. No, it's more 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. type. But of course, facilities are open up in the mornings. So you need to act at 9 o'clock, and you need to be ready to start well before 9 o'clock. Yes.
For those facilities, those resources to be ready for those you serve. So you're serving them often into the night, but the facilities during the day.
Yes.
So it's not for the faint-hearted, but it's for those whom He chooses. Yes.
And I would ask you then, it would be very easy to, and I have done this many times, I'm sure many of our viewers have done it. You wake up and you can only see the myriad of things that need to be done that day. And it would be very easy to be quite mechanical about it and to be quite joyless about it.
Yes.
How do you sustain your joy in your spirit, that joy of living? How do you keep that up?
That's a blessing, isn't it, from God? We always, all of us face, doesn't matter who we are, those things, those attacks of stealing our joy. It's a challenge. It is. And, we have to have, for those who work at Exodus Youth Worx, we have those people that we go to, and whether it be a priest or a confession father or a Christian counsellor, or to unload and to examine where we are with each client or member of those. And
perhaps prayer too, just being in that constant communion with Him strengthens.
Absolutely. The enemy wants to drag us down. And so if Christ is not in front of us, yes, we would be consumed. We would be drowned by bad things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Debbie, I thank you so much for your time. I thank you so much for your testimony, which I hope has encouraged all of our viewers as well. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for having me.
And I hope that you will join us as we hear more about this very exciting ministry, Exodus Youth Worx, in our next episode of Transformed. Thank you.